Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of this F1 25 Joshua Pearce career mode. If you did miss the last episode, we won the Las Vegas Grand Prix. We had another 1-2 for the team locked in, but as we were battling our teammate Sonny Hayes for the win, unfortunately, he got a snap of oversteer exiting the final corner and was in the fence to bring out a safety car. It was also a McLaren double podium as well, which we haven't seen at all this season, considering they are in the Constructors title fight with Red Bull. So very just bizarre circumstances actually to think that it's taken this long for them to get their first double podium. And it was Norris claiming P2 just ahead of Oscar Piastri in third. And despite the podium finish for Lando Norris, it wasn't enough in the end to keep him in title contention, with Max Verstappen sealing the title, and he can relax a bit heading into the final 2 rounds of the season and is now a 5-time world champion. And with the championship now pretty much wrapped up with decent gaps between the top few drivers, Max Verstappen has the untouchable lead at the top of the standings, with Lando Norris trailing by 59 points. And then it's myself in third, 60 points behind Lando. Hayes in ninth, 42 points behind George Russell. And in the Constructors' Championship, it's still all to play for, with Red Bull leading by only 28 points to McLaren. Then it's Ferrari in third, 105 points further back. And Apex GP, we sit fourth, another 51 points back. And jumping straight to the durability, we still got more upgrades to save for next season, so we're going to try and get a few of those in. And we have 2 new parts on the car for Qatar, being for the gearbox and the MG UK. And as I said a few episodes ago, when the new regulation change got announced for the new season, I said that I will put my focus into keeping the upgrades we already have and stop purchasing new parts for the car. And this has now been visualized with the flat line that we have in our development now, but we remain the fastest car. All seems to be the same with McLaren and Ferrari looking like they're the only teams to bring upgrades this race weekend, as we jump straight to sprint qualifying.
It's all about flow and pace today, qualifying in Qatar, a high-speed test that will set the grid for tomorrow's race. So welcome along.
This LaSalle circuit is by far one of the best circuits on this calendar for hot lapping. It is just so satisfying when you do get a lap absolutely nailed around this very fast flying circuit. We'll be coming to the end of our first flying lap here, actually our only flying lap here in SQ1 here on the medium compound tyres. It's 2 purples and a green sector, and that will lead us to an Apex GP 1-2. We're 3/10 ahead of Sonny Hayes, and it is Verstappen in third, a half a second behind, and knocked out in SQ1 is Esteban Ocon by 600ths of a second. Then it's Gabriel Bortoleto. Oliver Behrman makes it both the Hasses out here in qualifying. Lance Stroll, Jack Doohan and Liam Lawson not making it to this second part of sprint qualifying, as once again we only go out for a singular lap here, and once again it's going to be 2 purples, and then we're going to finish off the lap with a green sector. So losing a little bit of time in the final sector there, not able to optimize it. But once again, we're fastest, and this time by 2/10 ahead of Max Verstappen. Then Tsunoda in third, 6/10 behind. And Sonny Hayes is in ninth. He's 1.1 seconds off the pace. And then knocked out in SQ2 is Alex Albon by 2/10. Kimi Antonelli. Leclerc is a surprise elimination, actually. Isaac Hadjar, Pierre Gasly, and Nico Hulkenberg not making it to the sprint shootout. And we are going to end it with only 1 lap. We've only got the 1 set of softs, and a tyre will not really do anything more than 1 lap. You might be able to get 2 laps out of a soft compound tyre, especially around such a high deck track like this. And we are on sprint pole by a massive 6/10 to Lando Norris. It's Hayes in third, missing out in the front row by only 200ths of a second.
So it's all about speed in today's sprint, not very many laps and no chance to get ahead on strategy. Who here today has the raw skill to take them to the top? Off the back of a fantastic qualifying session, it's time to see how our starting grid looks for today's sprint. Joshua Pearce lines up on pole position, and Lando Norris lines up alongside. As we continue through the rest of the grid today, we have Hayes, Verstappen, Oscar Piastri and Russell, Hamilton, Tsunoda, Sainz and Fernando Alonso, Albon, Antonelli, Charles Leclerc and Hadjar, Gasly, Hulkenberg, Esteban Ocon and Gabriel Bortoleto, Behrman, Stroll, Doohan and Liam Lawson rounds off the grid.
Okay, let's have a comms check, please. Radio check. Okay, here we go. I know what you can do. Don't let me down.
And for today's sprint, we're going to be sticking with the soft tyre. And this is place, as I said before, it's got high tyre wear. So even though it's a sprint, we've got to make sure we take care of these tyres. We don't want to end up with any tyre-saving dramas at the end of this 10-lap sprint as we get ready for 5 red lights. And we're off for the sprint race here in Qatar, and it's a alright start for ourselves. We get a little bit bogged down in the first gear, and we immediately get reminded from our race engineer that we do have some worn components in on the car this race weekend, trying to make it to the end of the season without having to take any further engine penalties. And so in doing so, we are running a few worn components on the car for today's sprint, and you'll notice that we were also running them for qualifying with Parc Ferme. Got to run the same parts between sprint qualifying and the sprint race, but we can put the fresh stuff onto the car for Grand Prix qualifying and, of course, the Grand Prix, the try, and make sure that we will get to the end of those laps as we come to the end of our first lap here, and saving a little bit of ERS here. Just want to make sure that we've got plenty of ERS for when DRS does get enabled, which it has this lap. Norris looks to try and fancy himself and move around the outside. We're wise to it, and we managed to squeeze him out on the exit of turn 1. And yeah, just trying to make sure we save that bit of ERS, because if that's the pace of the McLaren down the straight without the DRS aid, I don't really want to know what its pace is going to be like when it comes to time that he's going to have the DRS. So got to knuckle down and try and extend that gap to over a second now, as behind us it's Carlos Sainz versus Yuki Tsunoda. They're going side by side and have been side by side for quite some time so far here on lap 2. And it's going to be Carlos Sainz who gets the 8th position, and crucially that final point paying position here in today's sprint. As behind us it's our teammate Sonny Hayes in 3rd, but not anymore, because that looks like a puff of smoke coming out the back of his Apex GP car. And unfortunately for our teammate, he is out of today's sprint race, and that might just put an end to his chase for George Russell to claim P8 in the World Drivers' Championship, as he currently sits in 4th in today's sprint race. As Norris uses that DRS, he gets himself past us, and so now we have to try and sit in tight behind. I did consider for half a moment there, maybe sending it back down the inside of turn 1. I reckon I was just within lunging range of Lando Norris, but in the end decided that I'll try and use the DRS. Unfortunately though, the dirty air around here is pretty shocking, as we do just get enough of a straight for us to get that move done into turn 1, and we have to actually drop it down to 3rd gear just to make sure we get the car stopped having the brake so late with the overspeed as well from the DRS and ERS, as Max Verstappen makes contact there with George Russell trying to take that 4th position away, and that is damage on his front wing there. You can see he's missing the end plate on the left-hand side of his car, and that has proven to be costly, because he's now fallen outside of the DRS of George Russell, and he is under attack from Lewis Hamilton in the foreground. But we're looking at the two McLarens battling it out. It's Piastri who now goes through into 2nd place ahead of Lando Norris. It's all gloves off at McLaren now that the World Championship battle is over. Lando Norris missing out on the Drivers' Championship. Verstappen has claimed it last episode, and so McLaren battle it out, and this time we don't have to worry too much about the team orders. But Verstappen actually manages to hold off Lewis Hamilton. I thought that was going to be an easy move, but Max Verstappen well and truly now outside of George Russell's DRS. He's now nearly 2 seconds behind. But Lewis Hamilton, he is going to be all over the back of Max Verstappen. These two have had plenty of history if we all refer back to the iconic season it was of 2021. And now with Lewis in Ferrari's colours, the scarlet red prancing horse car that is, and Max Verstappen still in the Red Bull, but it's a Red Bull that hasn't looked as dominant as it had in the last few years. They're still battling it out for the constructors with McLaren, but he's made contact once again now with Lewis Hamilton. This time it was George Russell. Well, last time it was George Russell. This time it's Lewis Hamilton, and that I'm sure is not going to be good for his front wing. But the battles slowly died off towards the end of the Grand Prix. Everyone started finding their pace, but we will cross the line to claim victory in the sprint race. We go from pole to the win in the sprint race. So absolutely perfect race in the end. We did have to battle Lando Norris just for a little bit there, and in the end it would be Piastri and Norris up on the sprint podium with us. And the rest of the top 8, George Russell, Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton, Yuki Tsunoda and Carlos Sainz. Unfortunately for our teammate Sonny Hayes, running 3rd, suffered a mechanical failure resulting in an early retirement, as we now get ready for Grand Prix qualifying.
It's all about flow and pace today, qualifying in Qatar. A high-speed test that will set the grid for tomorrow's race. So welcome along.
So there's only one result in this session that I'm going to be satisfied with, and that is going to be pole position. We set the fastest lap time in sprint qualifying, and so all we got to do now is just match that. It would be even better if we could even better it. And this time around here in the first qualifying session, we've got a little bit of traffic to deal with. You can see washing a little bit wide with the dirty air, and that is going to hold us up just a little bit there because we do not go fastest. It was still two purples and a green, but in the end it was Verstappen fastest in qualifying 1 by 2/10 ahead of myself, then Leclerc in third, half a second behind, and our teammate Sonny Hayes is in fourth, but he's 1.1 seconds off the pace. And knocked out in qualifying 1 is Pierre Gasly by 800ths, and then Esteban Ocon. The two racing bulls of Hadjar ahead of Liam Lawson. There's Jack Doohan, who makes it both Alpines out, and Lance Stroll will line up in 22nd position for Sunday's Grand Prix. As now we come to the end of our first flying lap, or only flying lap here in qualifying 2. But we have done this on that same set of tyres that we used in Q1. I figured we didn't really go as fast as we wanted to. It was still P2, but the tyres probably weren't too badly worn. When I put them on the car, they were at 6% wear, so went around and we've gone fastest on a used set of tyres. It's Norris in third, only 400ths behind Max Verstappen. Our teammate is in fourth, 6/10 off the pace. Hulkenberg put it in 6th position in the Sauber, but he's 9/10 off the pace. So the Saubers have actually made it into Q1, well, at least one of them has, and there's a couple of big names being knocked out. Charles Leclerc once again out in qualifying, and also Oscar Piastri in the McLaren. He hasn't made it into this shootout for Sunday's Grand Prix. We're going to finish our first flying lap, and we go fastest with a 20.2 as we start our final flying lap. Brand new set of soft tyres for this one lap dash in this LaSalle circuit. Keeping it nice and tight at turn 1. We haven't improved though. We're flirting on the edge of improvement. We're currently switching very rapidly between red and green on our time delta there. So you can see that we've absolutely pretty much nailed that first sector. I don't think there's too much time to find here. Flicking it through the fast right-handers and under brakes, we gain a little bit of time. It's about 1/10 of a second we're able to gain going through that hairpin. Power on the exit, and we're able to still just under 1/10 of a second. We're a little bit wide going through this right-hander here, using all of the track as we now flick it back to the right, and then deep onto the brakes, down to 4th gear, and early onto the power, using as much ERS as we dare, because this part of the track is slightly uphill, so we want to try and make sure that we maximize our speed into this flat out section. We've disengaged the ERS to make sure we've got enough for the run to the line. It's flat out all the way through here. We'll drop it down just to 6th gear. We don't really have to, but it just means that we can keep the cars a tad settled, because I found it was starting to get a little bit loose going that extra little bit faster through there, so that kind of helps maintain our speed. But look at that, we've now jumped it up to nearly 2/10 of a second improvement, and that is us on pole position for the Qatar Grand Prix, and Mark is absolutely ecstatic with that lap. He knows that was something pretty cool, and in the end we're going to be on the front row with Max Verstappen, and the gap of pole was 3/10 of a second. Our teammate Sonny Hayes will line up in third, 7/10 behind me. So in the end, it was really a 2-horse race for pole position. Hulkenberg in the end with the Sauber managed a 9th position, which isn't too bad considering he even made it into Q3.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, once more to the Middle East for what could be a very tricky night for our drivers tonight. Sandy, dusty, and with the sun setting, the temperature dropping too. This could be an intriguing event. Stand by for the Qatar Grand Prix. We're back here in LaSalle for a track that's 3.34 miles long. There are 16 turns around its unique 3-prong shape and just a single DRS zone out of turn 16. It's fast and it's flowing, and there's a good overtaking opportunity with DRS down the long straight and into turn 1. It's time to take a look at our starting grid for today's race. Joshua Pearce lines up on pole position, and Max Verstappen lines up alongside. Considering the rest of the grid, we have Hayes, Norris, George Russell and Tsunoda, Hulkenberg, Albon, Piastri and Gabriel Bortoleto, Leclerc, Fernando Alonso, Carlos Sainz and Antonelli, Gasly, Hamilton, Esteban Ocon and Jack Doohan, Stroll, Behrman, Hadjar and Liam Lawson rounds off the grid. Which of these talented drivers will come out on top today? And alongside me today, a man small in stature but big on comment, Anthony Davidson. Hello. Now, we had great fun watching them win last time out. What a great victory it was. But can they carry that into today's race?
It's the important one, isn't it, Crofty? You've done it once, can you do it again? But, you know, if you start believing in yourself and the confidence starts to build, that inner confidence is what you need. And you can carry that through to future races, including this one, and you set that ball rolling. That's the critical thing that they're looking for here. And I believe if you've got that first race win or a win at any stage, it can start to roll with you in a good way.
All right, let's have a quick radio check, please. Radio check. Okay, here we go. I know what you can do. Don't let me down.
So now, let's see if we can't do what we did in the sprint race, convert this pole position to a race win. And we're going to stick with the default strategy, because in the sprint race, when we were behind Norris, I noticed that the dirty air around here was actually pretty disgusting. It was hard to stay close to be able to make that overtake using the DRS into turn one. So thinking about track position, I'm going to stick with the one stop for today's Grand Prix, starting on the mediums and then going to the hard compound tyres, as we now sit on the grid for the start of the Grand Prix, and it's lights out and we're off for today's race. And it is a rapid start from ourselves. We're already jumped the field by half a second. We have annihilated them off the start of the race here, and Mark once again immediately telling us that we've got a couple of worn components on the car. We did change them between the start of the Grand Prix segment of the weekend and the sprint section to try and make sure that we are running some of the better parts that we've got available to us. And behind us though, George Russell and Nico Hülkenberg. So Hülkenberg, he's got himself up a few positions here off the start of the race. He's now battling a Mercedes to try and get himself up into 6th position. They'll continue to run side by side down into the hairpin, and we have now already, by the time we get to the second sector, broken the DRS from Max Verstappen. So it has been an absolute dream start, and you can visually see there, look at the gap that we've managed to pull to the Red Bull. It is absolutely gigantic, and that is going to be hopefully meaning that we can kind of relax a little bit in this Grand Prix. And as we close out the opening lap here, you can see the gap is now 1.5 seconds. Russell, though, the bottleneck of Nico Hülkenberg, he's a bit of a moving chicane now, because the gap to Yuki Tsunoda after the first lap of being stuck behind a Sauber is over 2 seconds. And so it is absolutely critical that Russell make that move to get himself now up in front of Nico Hülkenberg, and Piastri will also follow through. So he gets himself now up into 7th position, and now come to the end of lap 2. Unfortunately for Fernando Alonso, it's been a pretty meh of a weekend. He's had not really done too much so far. He didn't score any points in the sprint race, and unfortunately as well, he is not going to be scoring anything here in today's Grand Prix, suffering a mechanical failure there, and that is his day done at the end of lap 2, and just not making it to pit lane as well, stopping just shy of actually making it there. But luckily he was close enough that we didn't have to get any stoppages in this Grand Prix. Bortoleto now gets himself ahead of Nico Hülkenberg. So Hülkenberg could find himself now outside of the points within only a couple of laps after starting inside the top 10, and that is exactly what has happened. Charles Leclerc, he now gets himself ahead of Hülkenberg. That puts him up into P10. Lap 5 now, we get our first objective of the Grand Prix, and that is to achieve a nice quick lap time. I don't really see the need to this, but taking a look, I'm currently lapping still pretty close to my best lap time. It's a 23.9 so for my best lap, and the target lap time is a 29.4, and so we're going to easily, without really having to try, complete that objective. And so in the end, I reckon that was just him making sure that I don't relax too much with the lead that we've already been able to create. 2.5 seconds our lead currently sits, as Piastri now gets himself ahead of Yuki Tsunoda. They'll move him up into 5th position, so now the McLarens sit 4th and 5th so far in this Grand Prix. As behind, the battle is continuing to intense. Bortoleto is now up into 8th position, as both him and Charles Leclerc dispatch the Williams of Alex Albon, and that will put Albon now down to P10, but only a lap later, and Charles Leclerc turn to get himself ahead of Bortoleto. So is Gabriel now about to face the same ending that Hülkenberg has faced, and that is him falling outside of the points. At the moment, it does seem like that he's holding on to that position. Hülkenberg, just taking a note here, all the way down in P18, so he is absolutely plummeted, but not as bad as Kimi Antonelli, who now suffers an engine failure. We saw the plume of smoke in the background, and now he awkwardly, very awkwardly, is in the middle of the track trying to find a safe place to park. He was involved, if you do remember, in that giant crash with him, Bortoleto, and Yuki Tsunoda, trying to avoid a breaking down Red Bull, and that ended up with him having a Sauber pretty much on top of his car. So I'm quite surprised that Antonelli was actually taking those risks driving where he was, considering only 2 races ago that was the type of situation that he was in. As now we've got a Esteban Ocon looking to try and get himself ahead of Bortoleto. As we were saying just before, he is now outside the points. So the Saubers looked really, really good in the opening stages of this Grand Prix. Hulkenberg has now dropped all the way down to last position. Well, it's P20, but it's last on the road because the only people behind him aren't in the race anymore. And now Bortoleto sits in 11th position. So it was looking so promising for Sauber. And it's not looking like they're going to be scoring any points with the current pace that they're falling down the field as these McLarens, they're battling it out really tough at the moment. As I said in the sprint race, their championship hopes for the Drivers' Championship has come to an end now with this race and next round of Abu Dhabi now not in contention for them. So it's gloves off at McLaren. They're battling it out for bragging right, and also, as long as they don't take each other out, these guys can battle it out, and they're still going to be scoring the same amount of points against Red Bull. They're still in a constructors fight, and heading into this weekend, it was only 20 points off the top of my head that they were trailing Red Bull by. So these points definitely going to be very valuable to the McLaren team in this World Constructors fight as we get our next objective of the Grand Prix, which is to use the ERS mode for 1.3 seconds each lap, which is going to be, once again, really easy because I'm probably, as you see there, I just used it 1.9, and that's usually where I use it. But one thing you may have noticed is that down the bottom, my last radio message from our race engineer Mark was still talking about Kimi Antonelli. So since Antonelli's retirement, I haven't had a race engineer. So I wonder if we're starting to have some radio issues that we've seen previously in the first few rounds. There was a common issue that we were having, so maybe these little gremlins are starting to come back, and when we came into the lane, you would see that our tyre wear was brick red. Those mediums were absolutely cooked, and in the end, it was definitely something that we had to do, which was that pit stop, but we'll use these hards to the end of the Grand Prix. We're doing an order check here now that the pit phase has come to an end, so we lead the way by 8 seconds to Max Verstappen. Piastri now gets himself up into third to put himself onto the podium. Our teammate, unfortunately, now falls off of that podium. He sits 4th position. And then it's Lando Norris, George Russell, Yuki Tsunoda, Charles Leclerc, Carlos Sainz in the Williams, and Stroll in the Aston Martin. He'll find himself rounding out the final points paying position. And behind him, the currently racing really hard. It's Hamilton versus Esteban Ocon, the 2 Ferrari-powered cars here, battling it out just in front of another Ferrari-powered car, and that is Gabriel Bortoleto in the Sauber as they continue to go side by side. 3 Ferrari-powered cars, 3 different teams, and this is going to be a very interesting battle, but it is going to be, of course, Hamilton, who gets himself ahead of Ocon, ahead of Bortoleto, and then behind it's Albon, Gasly, Isaac Hadjar, Nico Hulkenberg. He was well and truly inside the top 10, but now finds himself P17. Jack Doohan, Oliver Behrman, Liam Lawson is last on the road at the moment, with the only other 2 in non-finishing positions at the moment, and that is Antonelli and Fernando Alonso, both suffering mechanical issues as we complete our objective, and as quickly as we complete it, we get another one, which is the Drainer ERS to 36%, and so that is going to be one that I'm just going to try and get done as quickly as possible, because it's not really an issue. I'm currently just cruising, to be honest. I mean, I'm absolutely just in zen mode at the moment. I am cruising, I'm in my element, and so I just dumped the ERS down the straight and just decided to get back into my rhythm. At the moment, not feeling anything from the tyres. Tyres are still feeling very fresh. As Hamilton, he's now looking to get himself into the points. We saw while we were doing the order check on lap 16 that he was battling it out with Ocon. So he's been able to pull away from Ocon. He's broken that DRS. He's pulled the 3 seconds needed, and he's now side by side with Lance Stroll. Is he going to be able to get himself inside the points? He'll continue to go side by side with the Aston Martin, but in the end, pulls just behind of Stroll. And that is going to be him still sitting in 11th position, but he's going to wait and use the DRS, and now he'll use the DRS and absolutely breeze past the Canadian there and gets himself now up into 10th position. So that is a singular point for Lewis Hamilton in today's Grand Prix with 6 laps to go. And a few laps later, going on to the final lap of the Grand Prix, Hamilton is not satisfied with a P10. He wants a P9, and he will claim that against Carlos Sainz using the DRS around the outside at turn 1, and that is now a Ferrari 8-9 in today's race. And we've had a fairly quiet race. Not too much has happened. We did lose our race engineer, so maybe that's why it's a bit quiet. We didn't have Mark screaming down our ear, but we claimed victory, and he's back. Mark is back. We've got him back. Maybe he just wanted to leave us alone for the Grand Prix.
Well, it's victory, and what a victory for Joshua Pearce.
And it's always good, Crofty, to get that momentum on your side, and it's really good for your confidence as well. The more confident you are, the further that can take you.
And once all the hard work is over, and after lap of brilliant racing, it's time now to celebrate with our podium trio.
So, for the first time in our F1 career, we have clean swept the weekend with both pole positions, the sprint win and the Grand Prix victory, and it's 2 in a row as well for ourselves, 3 in a row for Apex GP. Mega form that the team is on at the moment, with Max Verstappen and Oscar Piastri joining me up on today's podium here in Qatar, and the rest of the top 10 was our teammate Sonny Hayes in 4th position. Then it was Lando Norris, George Russell, Yuki Tsunoda, Charles Leclerc. We saw Lewis Hamilton's last lap pass on Carlos Sainz to claim 9th and 10th position. Then Kimi Antonelli and Alonso, they were the only non-finishers in today's Grand Prix. As Max Verstappen, he still leads the Drivers' Championship. Obviously, he's the world champion by 65 points to Lando Norris. And then it's myself in 3rd, 43 points behind Lando. And Sonny Hayes is in 9th, 43 points behind George Russell. And Red Bull lead the Constructors' Championship by only 20 points now to McLaren. So it's all or nothing into the last round of the championship. And Ferrari are third, further 134 points behind, with us now only 15 points behind Ferrari. So could we maybe take 3rd position away in the final race? It's 20 points separating 1st and 2nd, and 15 separating 3rd and 4th. So it is absolutely on for Abu Dhabi as we go into that final race weekend. For our driver ratings, everything has gained points, with the overall rating at 87, and our driver recognition remains at 58%. And that is going to be all for today's episode of this series. If you did enjoy it, please make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one for the season finale.